No one expected the silence inside that hall to feel so heavy. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from confusion. It was the kind that follows impact. When everyone in the room realizes they've just witnessed something irreversible. Moments earlier, world leaders had been exchanging polite smiles, trading carefully measured phrases in the language of diplomacy. Cameras flashed, journalists murmured, officials adjusted their ties, expecting yet another speech crafted for headlines and forgotten by evening. But what happened instead split the atmosphere like a hammer hitting glass. Because when President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso took the microphone, he didn't offer niceties. He didn't flatter allies. He didn't bow to pressure. He looked straight into the cameras, straight past the delegates, straight at one man watching on satellite feed, Benjamin Netanyahu. And with a voice that held no tremor, Traoré issued a line no African leader had ever dared deliver so directly. You have 48 hours to apologize to Africa, or you will not be welcomed on this continent again. No metaphor, no diplomatic cushion, no backdoor phrasing, just a countdown. A 48-hour clock suddenly began ticking in the minds of every government watching. The representatives in the room froze. Some lowered their gaze. Others stiffened in disbelief as if they'd misheard. A few shuffled their papers as though hoping sound alone could erase what had just happened. But there was no undoing it. Because in that moment it wasn't just Traoré versus Netanyahu. It was Africa speaking to power without permission. And the world had no script prepared for that. Not even 5 seconds had passed before the ripple effect began. Phones buzzed under tables. Diplomatic aides leaned toward their ministers with hurried whispers. Live-stream comment sections exploded across multiple languages. Because this wasn't just a speech. This was a direct ultimatum. 48 hours. 2 days. A political eternity for some, a blink of an eye for others. But no one could deny what it meant. For the first time in decades, an African leader wasn't appealing, wasn't requesting, wasn't negotiating. He was commanding. And suddenly, every government watching had the same question. Would Israel respond? Would Netanyahu acknowledge it? Would he dismiss it? Would he retaliate? Diplomatic analysts scrambled to interpret it. Western media outlets stumbled over their own language, unsure how to categorize what had just happened. Some called it reckless, others whispered historic. African news stations, meanwhile, didn't hold back. Headlines rolled across screens. Traoré breaks the silence. 48 hours, Africa demands answer. Netanyahu confronted, unexpected challenge from Sahel. But the real reaction didn't come from officials. It came from the streets. In Ouagadougou, people gathered within minutes, chanting the ultimatum like a war cry. In Bamako, taxi drivers blasted the speech from their radios. In Dakar, university students printed the words on their shirts. In Johannesburg, someone projected the line onto a skyscraper. Africa will not be anyone's pawn. The message had escaped the conference hall. It had become something more than a quote. It had become a line in the sand. To outsiders, it might have looked like just another heated political exchange. But Africans knew better. This wasn't normal. This wasn't routine diplomacy. This wasn't another statement destined to vanish by morning. Because for years, Africa had been taught to respond differently. When faced with disrespect, leaders issued carefully polished condemnations, written for approval by international partners. When foreign powers crossed lines, officials sent letters expressing concern that no one ever read. Even when injustice was blatant, the world expected Africa to complain politely, then return to business as usual. But this time, there was no complaint, no plea, no softened language. Just a countdown, a line that said, "You have 48 hours, or you're no longer welcome here." There was no room for misinterpretation. Journalists scrambled to understand what gave Traoré the audacity to speak in such absolute terms. But they missed what ordinary Africans immediately recognized. This wasn't just boldness, it was exhaustion. Decades of condescension. Centuries of silence disguised as diplomacy. A continent tired of being treated as an afterthought. And in that moment, Traoré didn't speak like a president negotiating policy. He spoke like a generation refusing humiliation. And that is why the reaction wasn't measured. It was explosive, because across Africa, millions whispered the same words. Finally, someone said it. To the casual observer, Traoré's 48-hour ultimatum may have looked sudden, even impulsive. But it wasn't born that morning. It was forged days earlier behind closed doors. According to diplomatic insiders, during a private gathering of Western leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly mocked African presidents, referring to them as inexperienced, politically immature, and too naive to negotiate real power. Worse, he reportedly suggested that Africa's debt dependency should be tightened, that the IMF should hold them closer on a leash. Words not meant for the public, words whispered with the confidence of men who believed no one was listening. But this is not the world of the past. Secrets don't stay buried. Within 48 hours, the comments leaked, and what followed could not be contained. Across Twitter, TikTok, WhatsApp groups, and African news forums, a single phrase exploded. Chakuli's Africa is not your pawn. People were not just angry. They were tired. Tired of being lectured by the same powers that drained their lands. Tired of being called developing while developing everyone else's wealth. Tired of being treated like a geopolitical playground. And so by the time Traoré stepped onto that podium, he wasn't just speaking for Burkina Faso. He was speaking for 1.4 billion people, who had already written the answer in their hearts. When Traoré finally delivered his response, it was not wrapped in diplomatic ambiguity. He didn't offer metaphors. He didn't hide behind protocol. He spoke with the clarity of someone who knew the wound, and was done pretending it didn't exist. Africa will not be anyone's pawn. Not in diplomacy, not in trade, not in history. Not anymore. No applause followed. Not because people disagreed, but because they were stunned. It wasn't a speech. It was a sentence carved into the ground, a line that divided before and after. Even veteran diplomats, those who had spent years perfecting the art of saying nothing with many words, felt something shift, because in that moment, Traoré didn't request acknowledgement. He forced it. Journalists rushed to push the footage online. Within an hour, the clip had crossed Europe, Asia, South America, and the Arab world. African diaspora groups picked it up like a battle anthem. In London, protesters outside a foreign embassy played the line on a speaker. In New York, mural artists spray-painted it on concrete walls. In Johannesburg, skyscrapers lit up with the projection. Africa is not a piece on your chessboard. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. Inside foreign ministries across the world, alarms rang without a sound. Officials knew they couldn't afford to dismiss it, but neither could they endorse it. So they defaulted to the strategy they use when caught off guard. They said nothing. No condemnation. No support. Just a carefully calculated void. But silence in moments of moral clarity becomes its own kind of confession. Because while governments hesitated, citizens did not. Africans everywhere, from Cape Town to Cairo, declared what their leaders were too cautious to say. He spoke for us, and we will stand by him. Online petitions demanding formal support surged past hundreds of thousands of signatures in a matter of hours. Meanwhile, Western media commentators scrambled to reframe the situation. Some claimed Traoré was escalating tensions. Others said he was playing to the populist base. But in trying to soften the moment, they only revealed how unfamiliar they were with genuine defiance. Diplomats may debate in silence, but people speak in motion. Within 24 hours of the ultimatum, the streets across Africa moved. In Ouagadougou, thousands gathered in Revolution Square, not waiting for instructions, chanting, 48 hours or nothing. In Bamako, motorcyclists formed human convoys, waving homemade banners. If Africa is naive, why do they fear our unity? In Dakar, fishermen refused to sail for a day, not as a strike, but as a message. Respect is not negotiable. In Accra, young rappers uploaded freestyle tracks sampling Traoré's voice over heavy drums, turning the ultimatum into rhythm. In Johannesburg, protesters didn't just chant. They projected. This is not an ask. This is an answer. It wasn't organized by parties. It wasn't funded by campaigns. It was organic, unscripted, untamed. Because this was not about policy. This was about dignity. And dignity, once awakened, does not return to sleep. It wasn't only Africa listening. In São Paulo, Brazilian activists held placards reading, If Africa rises, the South rises. In Jakarta, Indonesian students spray-painted on city walls. Traore's Africa, our inspiration. In Karachi, Pakistani commentators debated on late-night television whether this marked a new alignment beyond NATO and BRICS. In Riyadh, Saudi analysts called it the loudest anti-colonial message of the decade. Even in Beijing, state media cautiously referenced the speech as a reflection of shifting global influence. And in Washington, silence spoke louder than words. Officials couldn't afford to appear dismissive, nor could they openly support the ultimatum. So they waited, just like everyone else, staring at the clock. Every hour that passed without a response from Netanyahu only made one thing clearer. The ultimatum was no longer about one apology. The 48 hours had become a test of power. Not military power, not financial power, moral power. Would a leader of a heavily armed nation acknowledge the demand of a leader from a nation, often dismissed as poor, or would pride override prudence? This wasn't just Israel versus Burkina Faso. It was the strong versus the underestimated. And suddenly, everyone knew. If Netanyahu responds, Africa wins. If Netanyahu stays silent, Africa still wins, because silence means the threat was felt. Either way, the balance had already shifted. Here lies the deepest truth. People thought the ultimatum was about words, but it was never about the apology. It was about position. It was a declaration that Africa no longer waits for validation. Because for decades leaders begged for acknowledgement, asked for seats at tables built by others. But this time, they didn't knock. They drew their own line. And that line, 48 hours long, was louder than 1,000 resolutions. This is not the part where the music swells and curtains close. This is not a happy ending. This is a warning. Because when a sleeping continent stands, the world trembles, but it also plots. Already there are whispers of economic pressure, of aid suspensions, of information campaigns branding defiance as aggression. But here is the question history will ask. Will Africa bow when pushed, or push back harder than ever before? The ultimatum was not the climax. It was the trigger. The 48 hours may have been directed at one man, but in truth, it was directed at the entire world order. And whether the apology comes or not, one fact remains. Africa has spoken, and this time it did not whisper. And now, the world must decide whether to listen or brace for the sound of a continent that no longer asks for respect, but demands it.